Okay, so forward edge all done. I've done a little bit of sanding work, literally just done some shaving. So using a flat edge blade, we've literally just run across just to take it down a bit. Couple of little lumps and bumps in there, but I think by the time the glue has totally dried, we can re-scribe in a little panel line and we'd be good to go. We put on these intakes on the inside, you probably see them here. Now the trouble is there was quite a nasty gap down there, so I've used a little bit of plastic weld glue just down there just to sort of get it to bite across. This one's pretty good on this side, but it was a little bit gappy. Now there is an ejector pin mark down there and anything else. You might want to sand that in and make a sort of better job of it. I tend to sort of leave it like this. I think by the time you try and look down there, you can't see much that's going on anyway. A couple of other areas, literally I've re-glued some of this around, trying to get rid of some of these big joins in here. You might be able to see we've got quite a large one down in there. You know, little things like that are somewhat annoying. I might be able to try something else, a little bit of plastic hard shim in there just to take care of it, but generally the rest of it's all okay and it's turning into quite a solid object. Now the wings, a little bit complex the way they go. You always have this trouble with sweep wings because obviously some manufacturers put in there where you can actually position the pylons just normally. Some of them try and do something clever with mechanics. We've got another one of these clever with mechanics type things. So actually what you get is these rotating, which are obviously the hangers for the pylon, which these guys here. Okay, now you get a long one and a short one. Okay, so just make sure that the longer pinned one is the bottom, nearest the wing root. The shorter one goes towards the top. Okay, and they sit in there just like that. Now the problem you have is that you get this great thing here, and that comes along now, and he will fit very nicely on the top of each of these, and you give them a bit of a push through, and I'm sure they'll work lovely, and you know the geometry does all work. But the thing is, when you try and actually get it onto the sort of the locating bracket, this pylon here has got a little tooth on it. It's a little bit fiddly and all the rest of it. So personally, I'm not bothering with it. Okay, we'll just hook him off. Also, I'm not going to have the wings all moving and everything else because we're going to have the flaps down, so you can't actually move the wings on it. So all we're doing is in a couple of little points to make out. Again, there's a little thing I'm finding with the kit, flash, tiny amounts of it, but make big differences to your joint. Make sure you sand off the one at the end here, because there's a little bit of flash down there. Also, this little guy here, actually you can see it quite nicely on this one. You've got a little bit of flash off of the ejector pin mark on this guy here. So again, you need to just get in here with a blade and cut that out. Otherwise, it's going to interfere with the joint. The other thing as well, where are we? This side isn't as bad actually. You've got the little locating tabs which are here, here and here. On the other wing, which I've done already, it had again a little bit of film hanging up where obviously it's pulled from the mould, and that would affect it as well. So making sure they're all nice and flush and in, it will just improve your fit. So literally this guy drops right on top. Now if for some reason when you do this, I can get it to line up, we'll be okay. Alright, pins are all jumped out, I think. That's alright, it's just this one here. This one, hold on a sec. Just have to get this apart. This is what I'm saying, when you're trying to do it with the areas with that bar in there as well, it's a complete and utter nightmare. So if I can just shoehorn this apart again and redo it. Because trying to get them all to stay in place is somewhat of a bit fiddly. Let's try that again. As long as these are actually facing forward, you'll be okay because they can't over rotate. Okay, so we just sit this guy down on top. That's better. Give that a good nudge in. Now, as I said, if you find, just stick a peg on these just to hold them in place before they all shoot off. This is a massive gap and it won't go together. What it is, you've got the pins the wrong way around, or you've got two from one wing on the other, because you get two tall ones, two short ones for these pylons. Okay, so if they are wrong, but what you've got them in here, they are a loose fit and you can twist them to the angle you want, what we'll do is we'll line the pylons up, glue them in place so we know exactly what we've got going on. So usual thing, we're just going to run around them with the glue and glue this one all up. So glue, that's it. Just in. When you're doing curved areas like the underside, as I say, I always just tip it up just a little bit and glue from the underside, just so it doesn't overrun. Same way down the front here. Okay, and down here, all these little pylons, all the areas, wingtip. Do a rough job for the moment, using scissors when you come to little areas, because obviously you need this squeezed together, but if you've got your hands in there they get all gluey. Okay, so we just do these on the front as well, little nudge, just to make sure they've got a good bite. These towards the rear, just do from the inside as well as the outside. I'm sort of rushing this a little bit more care was taken with the other one. Okay, bit of a nudge just down in there. Okay, and there we go. So don't put any glue near those yet because you need to line them up. Right, once you've done that, you should end up with something like this. Okay, being careful of those worm screws on the back, as we said, because obviously you don't want to make a mess of those. But that is in, and then this comes along and fits nicely onto the shoulder here, which you have the other wing on, and then you've got this guy, and then he's got a little key system where it locks in on the top here and locks all of that into position, which is quite a nice touch. It makes it very solid. It's not like some of the others like Tomcats and things where you just then put the roof on top and away you go. So by the time the other one's done, that'll give you some very nice thing. And obviously you can't over maneuver it as well. If you look here, you've got a little bar, and that is the correct angle for that position, and then in full swept it has it, so you can't overdo it, you can't put one down too far. So what we'll do in a moment is, obviously we're always going to be keeping it in this position, we'll actually glue it in that solid lump and do it like that. Okay, so that's those bits done. Next up is the back spine area, which you have a couple of little areas for. As I said, this is where, because obviously there'll be different variants of this coming along. So you've got this part on the top that fits onto the spine and goes in, so you get these little holes just at the top there, the little vents. Alright, so they go on. Again, just check your edges on this edge here especially, and on the other one. It's a little bit flashy, so you need to just take care of that. And then what you actually do, you put these bottom of these speed brakes in, which do go in something like, there's a little locating area on the underside. So again, they're just going to sit in, so we just pop one in for the moment. Okay, again, they're all just a little bit fiddly the way this all goes. Like, why this can't be moulded in one is beyond me. Okay, that's got it. Plenty of glue around the back and down the side. What we're going to do is pre-glue this side, so we just run the glue around it first. That one's in, which, as you can see, is a lot easier way of doing it. Then we come back with the glue on the top and just put all that back in. So when you have at the top, that's those in, looking very, very nice. And in fact, nice bit of detail in there, looking really, really good. Really happy of how that is until it falls off. Okay, so let's just stick him back in. Okay, and then we can put this one on the front, because this is going to be a one fit job to the top. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to do these front bits on here, glue this area here or here, until we know we're all good. Okay, so we're literally just going to put the rear spine area and glue that in. That way, once we put the top on, we can sort of maneuver it around and mould it to shape as is required. Okay, so that's those on. I'm going to peg just to reach over. Nope. Rusty clamp. One and two. Okay, so that's that one done. So that's it. So get the other wing finished off, we can get those positions put on the top, then the actual entire roof system will then sandwich right down when it's done on, which will then lock this front part in place and all the works like that. Okay, so moved on with this one. You probably see we've sanded and filled all the little areas that sort of needed doing, and to be honest, I didn't use any filler on this so far. The styrene itself is quite soft, and by that means when you use, you know, like something like a hot weld glue, put the lid on, like the Tamiya Extra Thin, it's got great sort of gap filling capabilities because it melts it quite soft. FX plastic tends to be the same, so obviously when you come along you just give it a good dollop, let it dry for a good couple of hours, then you can come in and sand it, and hopefully you can see there we've done a cracking job down here. So first up for us was to go round and re-scribe it. So we've got this sort of panel line running down here, comes along and swoops in. So all we've done is recreate that with our two chosen re-scribing tools. So for me, I love the Trumpeter cheapo, to be honest, this little budget one. It's only something like $2.99, $3.99, little one, but it's got an amazingly sharp tip. It does finer panel lines than certainly the Tamiya standard type of P cutter, which we're going to use here. Okay, so for this one it's a little bit more tricky on this side because we've got the panel line, we just took it from the rear using the same depth and just took it all the way to the front. So we've got to do the same here. So we'll look for the actual panel line and try and cape it moving as did the real thing. So say it's slightly different on this one. It doesn't go to this actual scoop, it sort of goes past it and then carries on. So using our tool, so we know it's straight until that one there. Okay, so we can just take it here, and usual thing when you do any type of scribing, let the cutter do the work, don't push down, a couple of light passes and we've put that panel line back in there absolutely spot on. So we can pop it a little bit more to the front. Okay, so we're just going to try and curve the line just a little bit. Now from my point of view we lose it somewhat around this front area, so we need to sort of work out exactly where it is, and because it is a slight curve, okay, so it doesn't make it exactly easy for us, so we know it sort of comes in here, and there is a slight thing of, well, you're going to be following the line that's there in the first place, so that's like a somewhat to there, then putting the blade in the hole to give us our start location. Let's just do that again, then up to where we know it joins in. Okay, then once we've got a line in there we can then use our P cutter and just using draggy motions we can carry on and put that line back in. So really what we've done, where we've got the actual, it was sandwiched together, we've gone in and put that panel line, which is the other great thing. When you've got a situation with a weld mark, which we'll show you in a moment at the rear, you can hide it brilliantly by putting a panel line in. So if you have got a panel line down there, easy little tip, bung a panel line in it, and that way perhaps your slightly iffy job of you know, welding it together and all things like that, you can actually hide that by using it. And so these rounded ones, we're just literally walking the blade round the corner, so the panel line now goes right the way over the edge. Okay, so we're going to do the same with this guy, same thing. Once you've done a few you can then move, not mask it, but you're just trying to put a couple in there, and then we just got this one to join up, but make sure your panel lines join up, don't let them just go off and end and don't go anywhere, otherwise what's going to happen is you have that sort of, especially if you're using washes and things, of panel lines just stopping and they don't carry on. So what I've done is I've done a couple of little jobs down here as well. We've put in the squares that we lost because obviously we did a lot of sanding work here and everything else, but that actually completes that area and joins all these in. And yes, this one at the front may be a little bit too in, perhaps it should have curved a little bit more, but I don't think anyone's going to notice that as we go right the way through. The intakes as well, you might be able to see on one of the angles, they're not too bad at all. Again, plenty of glue, in with old skinny stick down into there, and that makes them seamless from a point of view of you're not going to see it anymore. Okay, so you know, from our one, once we've got the outer ones on, which are here, Okay, and we pop these in. You've got to be a good eyesight to look down there and actually see that there is a small joint, so I won't worry too much about those. And don't worry about the top bit as well, because there is like a deflection flap at the top that drops, which slows the airflow going down into the engine so it doesn't stall it. So that's those front ends taken care of. Really good fit. It's a nice solid fit, quite happy with that. So next up you've got this here. Now this is that seam line from the top to the bottom as it comes along. So same thing again. What we're going to do is, using the original panel line, because we know it was a joint anyway, we're just going to come through. Now the great thing about using a template like this, because it's got holes in it, your fingers go through it and actually grip the underside and stop it from moving around too much, okay? But because it is on a curve, just take your time with it. Alright, so we're in here. Again, a couple of little pulls just to start with, and then just going to make sure we're happy. And you can feel it sort of little bit of jaggedness as we go along. Okay, just marrying it in, and the same, making sure these vertical ones go right the way around. Now they are very faint, so again, that one doesn't, that's pretty good, all of those. You can see we've done the other side here, it's a little bit cleaner and sharper, you can see it. We've got some nice panel line detail gone in there, and again, what looked like to be a really complex area has turned out to be very straightforward. No problem with that at all. So there we go, that's those done. A couple of things we've all done at the same time. I've put the rudders together just to save time. I was waiting for things to dry. Okay, we've put together, this is the rear section, which is going to fit on just like this. Again, we've gone right the way through, a little bit of liquid cement to sort of weld up those little inner areas. Okay, we've put the actual engine exhausts somewhat together as well, sanded, a little bit of filler just on the inside to make sure we were happy with those. We've put the pylons together, we've put the tail planes together, which was no problem at all. Just check for flash, tiny little bits of flash that made a little bit of an interference. We've put down the ECM pod and the buzz pod, or the BOS pod, okay, down here. Now there's no instructions for the RAF one for this, but all the parts are there. It's pretty straightforward. The ones with the triangles front and rear are these little guys. That's the one to do those with, okay? So just make sure you do those. Fuel tanks, normal thing, it's raised detail on these, all right? Sorry, hot day today. So raised details in with a knife, all right? So if you're using recessed, obviously we would use a blade. Where are we? One of these I've done, one I haven't. I'm just checking which one around we are. It is this one here. So what we're going to do, pop in the up against the surfaces, you can feel, in with a knife blade, and then just drag it right over. And when you drag it over, when you feel it, hopefully you might be able to see it there. It's a bit, cameras need to be a bit tighter, I think, but certainly that's put that in. You would never know it's been missing now. Okay, and that's the thing with it, you make a V cut into that, all right? So instead of having a scribing, just leaving a trench, this, you push the plastic, it pushes it up at the outside of it. It's such a fine cut, nobody will notice, and by the time it's had a wash and dry brushed, it'll be absolutely fine. But it saves all that hassle of like stretching sprue and all those things to make raised panel lines. I said about it earlier, we've got the system here. This is the back on with the spine with those intakes. As I say, they're a loose fit on the outside, because in test fitting you do need to play with them just a little bit. And now it's all dry, as you can see, it sits in here really nicely. And then these guys, we said, because they're a loose fit, you can sort of nudge them in. Okay, and I think they'll be absolutely fine when it comes to it. We're not going to have a problem with that at all. They're going to sit in there with a little bit of manoeuvring like that, bit of filler, be absolutely fine. They say it's a nice flat area, so it'll be no problem with that. So that's all those areas taken care of, moved forward a hell of a lot. Really comes together very quickly, this one. Now the next big thing, the wings. Already, you know, this kit's only been out now less than 2 weeks, and already there's lots of speculation on the internet about the instructions are wrong for the actual flaps, the way that they droop down and everything else like that. Now, as I said, I am by no means a tornado expert. There's obviously a lot of guys out there who are certainly a lot more in the know than I am. My own personal reference shots I've got, and the ones I've looked at the net, depending on how the flaps are drooped, does depend on how they look. Now, it's quite a complicated system. We know we have on the underside, okay, and on this top area, it sort of all wraps down and falls down the back. Now the instructions aren't exactly brilliant. All right, when you look at these, this is the sections we're on about. This forward slat thing is no problem at all. So we've got these grub screws, which actually like drive ones, they're threaded all the way. They basically unscrew, which pushes the slat, which is the front one that extends out and drops over the front to make a bigger wing area. No problem at all. That's, you know, by the by. So basically, if you're putting them on, you're going to be putting those in, and then it's going to stick to the front. The problem we have is the rear ones. Now, if you were doing it flaps up, all right, what you would have is, I'm just looking for the said parts. We've got them all here. And here, we just cut this one off because I haven't cut this one off the sprue yet. All right. What happens is, the instructions, I don't think are wrong. Along the internet, a lot of people are saying that they're round the wrong way and upside down and things like that. I don't think they are. They make sense to me. But I know I haven't deliberately been online and seen how other people have done it, because I'm trying to do it from our point of view of like, this is our first build and we're putting it together as you would. But as I said, there may be a fix for this. Usual thing, just have a look around the ejector pins on this one, make sure they're not interfering and raised and cutting in. I noticed with this one, which is one of the parts, the ejector fin had a little bit of flash on it, and what that has, it stops it interfering with the laying down and getting in there. So basically, I've broken this one off, but it doesn't make too much of a difference, okay? The way it goes in, the instructions will tell you to do this area first, okay? Which is to put all these in and glue them in, all right? And then once you've done this section, it goes in one into here and goes on. The trouble is, it doesn't make that much of a curve down, all right? Because when you look at references of them, it looks like they slightly stick out. The way I did it though was literally, we came along with this guy, which I'll do with you now, and we'll glue this little guy in place. So let me just put a couple of drops of glue down here. Again, making sure your ejector pins are all nicely out of the way. Alright, so we're just going to pop this in. Now this is one bit normally, but to be honest, as I said, I've broken it off, so that's my fault entirely, not the kit's. Okay. So we're just going to drop a bit of this down here. Extra thin, give it a couple of coats and it'll keep it wet long enough to be able to do it. Okay, so once this is on, now it's important you put this piece in first. Okay, because if you don't do this first, it won't overlap. And the system works that it actually is like an airliner. It pushes off the back. They don't just droop, okay? These actually fold right out and down to extend the wing area to make it bigger, okay? So as I said, I'm sort of going to rush through this, so hopefully it will all stay with me. Now, once you've done this one, this guy here fits to this part here, okay? He says around the wrong way. It's going to come in at the top here and fits in somewhat like this, okay, which extends down. These ones go in there as well. So the way I did it is the way I'm showing you here, is that then this one goes on. Okay, if we can get them in the holes, there is little locating tabs. It goes in here, and then this little guy goes in over the top. Now the thing is, a lot of the guys saying it should be more sort of tapered, more curved on all of these areas. As I said, I think it depends on the actual wing drop itself. I've already done this one here. So as I said, getting ahead of myself, if I do this one, because it's how I'm going to do it anyway, I'm not going to play around with it massively too much, okay? So if we can just get these to line up. So just put a bit of glue in at the top. Just down in here. Here. Again, if you have trouble with these in when you test fit it, just check the ejector pins, because as I said, it's the only thing I'm noticing with the entire build of this kit is that the flash is causing a little bit of fit issues. Now it's nothing to be over concerned with, because it's literally just a case of keeping an eye on it and you'll be fine. Now as I said, I'm rushing this somewhat. So what you actually have is a leading edge on this one, which you'll need to glue. Drop some glue just down in this seam, to take care of it, and to be honest, I've had a little bit more time on it and a slightly better job of that as I've done the other one, which we'll show you in a moment, but you'll get the gist. I'll repair this one afterwards. Okay, so that fits in like that. Then this guy, you've got these little holes all at the front here. You'll notice you've got tabs underneath with them all in as well. And then what happens is it literally comes in and drops in here as per the instructions tell you to do it. Okay, so we just do these rear ones. Alright, now the thing is these ones that are at the back, don't push them in too far. So you don't want it to be totally flush, because you need the movement on them to hang out. So it's well worth using a little bit of glue. Okay, putting them in there, then use some scissors or a blade or something else. I'll use my little cutter here, my scriber, just to pop them in, to hold them in without pushing them in too far. Okay, probably a blade would be better. So if you use a blade like this, you can just literally push them to how they are. Once they're glued, then do the tabs from the other side, like this, where they join up with that little wing root. And so I'm going to have to do a little fix job underneath here to get rid of this gap at the front. Okay, and that is how they go, as part of the instructions. So it's not so much of a problem, because, and here's one I did earlier, as you can see I made a better job of this one. Okay, but this then comes along, the right wing might help. Okay, and well then literally you've got a little locating tab back here, and there's one down this end, and they fit in to these feet. So this one down here, you sort of slide it in underneath. Okay, and it is important that it slides in underneath, otherwise it's not going to fit. And then these, your worm screws underneath here, go in the tabs on the first bit of flap, if you like. Okay, so when that comes in, theoretically this guy will fit in and lean down like this. Now I know what the problem is and why the guys are a little bit disappointed. It isn't on a par, something like that. Okay, it's not on a par with the real thing, because the real thing has a better curve to it. It actually sort of in stages comes down. It's not, this is more like flat and down, but I know what Revell are trying to do, and it's a pretty complex way of doing it. Okay, but I think it works quite well. I don't think it's actually too much of a problem. Okay, by the time you've got it in there, and you're putting it in really at more of a sort of 45 degrees, it's not like it's hanging 90 degrees down like a naval aircraft, it's just a little bit, and by the time the slat's on the front as well, I reckon it won't be a problem at all. But that is how it goes, as part of the instructions really tell you. Some people are saying it's upside down and back to front. I'm not taking too much notice of the numbers, but that's just the way I did it, and I got it to work, so I can't really see a sort of problem with that. But again, as I say, sometimes it's not worth reading everything you hear that it doesn't work and it's back to front and everything else, because actually I managed to get this to work the first time round. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go off and have a look around the internet and see how everybody else did it. As I said, it's not perfect. It should be stepped and feathered down more rather than just flat, okay? But it's good enough for what we're going to use. And don't forget, it's a straightforward out of the box, and we've just built it there and then in the last sort of 2 or 3 minutes, versus fiddling with it. You know, obviously you yourself, you could probably do it a little bit more time, do it properly, and get them all to fold down and everything else like that. But so far this is turning out to be an incredibly good kit. I am loving this build every single minute of this one. So we're going to let those bits of the wing dry and everything else. Then what we can actually do is get the wings fitted in. As I say, I didn't bother with those pylon things on there, but these can actually go on there because I've cleaned them up already. See, what you've actually got is this T-bar is going to go onto those wing tops. And what I'm going to do is just going to glue the front like here, okay, because the top, this bit, is going to hold down this back area anyway. So what we're going to do is glue literally that little bit, and that will just hold all of those in very nicely. Get that one in, then what we can actually do is get this on the top, okay, get that into position and everything else, take care of any glue and those things, but we'll talk about that in a minute once we've got this dry.